Thank you, Gretchen. Is the mic on? Oh, yeah, it's on loud. Thank you. This is an exciting opportunity to talk about something that the members of the TCAA think is the most important part of our craft. Without function, everything we do is irrelevant. So it absolutely starts here. When you go in the gallery, though, function happens the very first thing, the very first day. And then we may spend months putting the ornamentation and decoration on it that sometimes can be labeled as jewelry. Well, it's too pretty to use. It's going to be very exciting to ask these questions to Todd. I will say right now, while Todd is talking about this stuff and you have a question, we won't wait till the end. Ask the question now so that we can have a conversation. The more interaction y'all have, the more exciting this conversation could be. So ask away. This does bring credibility to the members of the TCA, and I'm excited to ask these questions. We got 4 disciplines, so that equals about 10 minutes per discipline. So we're just gonna scratch the surface, right? I mean, of course, bit and spur making is the most important. So we could talk forever about a bridle bit, but we won't. So anyhow, here we go. And Todd, let's start off with rawhide braiding and the hackamores, and we can progress through maybe the steps of not that we're getting into horsemanship or how it all works, but it is all part of it, right? And it'll all bleed together. So anyhow, there are many different hackamores and a lot of different ones up here. Why are all these different ones? What's going on here?
Well, first, let me explain to you what I was taught, in going from a snaffle to a hackamore to a bridle. And Don Murphy's the one who, from California, he threw this at me. It was kind of shocking, but he says when you put a horse in a snaffle, you go from the biggest snaffle and smoothest or less invasive to a smaller one as you go throughout that snaffle bit training process. Same thing with the hackamore. You go from the biggest one, which this is my favorite one to start a horse in a hackamore, to the smallest, and then same thing with the bridle bit. You go from the biggest, which this is my biggest spade that I have, biggest, to maybe something that's smaller. And again, through that process of all of the from big to small, and then in the bridle, as you put them in the bridle, and we do that as 5-year-olds, or excuse me, late 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. We start them in the bridle or the 2-rein, and through that process, then after you've had them in the bridle for a year or 2, then you can back off to like the smaller bridle, which I use a lot for non-pro riders, that maybe aren't going to be as handy with their hand, but they can get a hold of a horse's face. And particularly in our event, it's real important for a horse to pack the bridle or to be responsive in a bridle and be a reined cow horse and not get his head up in the air. So I think that whole bitting hackamore process is very important as to what your end product is, years down the line.
So when you say bigger, you're talking about the
size.
Like on the bar of this spade here. You're not talking about the height here. You're talking about the size of this bar down the.
And the spade itself. So like again, I check a horse up a lot in this here, not tight, but like back to the saddle horn and let that spade and that spoon kind of let them learn to balance on that. Right. Or off of it, whatever the case may be, so that they learn how to pack that bridle. And in fact, there's obviously hundreds of different ways of doing it, not to say that what I'm doing is right, but it just works for me. So anyway, that's the thought process and the theory behind what I do. And again, then with the hackamores, you can go down to the smaller ones, and then in the 6-year-old year, generally, then we go to this 2-rein. So this and a bridle over top of it, because that would be their first year in the bridle, and so you get to have a handful of bridle reins. You get to kind of cheat a little bit in that transitional process from the hackamore to the bridle.
So would weight be involved with either the bridle, in consideration with the bridle or the hackamore, and some being heavier or lighter? Is that something that you consider?
I think for sure, yes. Weight plays a big factor in that. I mean, again, like I ride some riding horses, not very many, but a lot of those bridles are much lighter, and and it feels weird to me a lot of times. Sure. When the reins are different, and so I think, and not to say that I don't put those horses, we show them in a bridle as a 3-year-old, so you move through all of that very quickly. But this takes, their first year in the bridle, straight up in the bridle, is a 7-year-old. So there's, again, a lot of time-honored tradition that we gain from California, Spain, all that, and got here.
Here we are. Stiffness of a hackamore. Some are looser, like cores, I guess. Rawhide guys, y'all can jump in, but is there differences there that you prefer, the stiffness of the hackamore? Yeah.
Again, like this hackamore that I like to start these 2-year-olds in, or 3-year-olds, is very loose and soft and again big, and so a hackamore is designed to break a horse in the poll, where like a snaffle bit particularly is you break a horse more from the withers. So this hackamore really helps in stopping, assisting you in stopping, but it is much more difficult to get a horse to bend laterally in a hackamore than it is a snaffle. So you have to spend a lot more work, and so I feel like the stiffer ones, and I have some of them over here, the stiffer ones, and this isn't the stiffest, I think this one here probably is, they're again much more difficult to get one to break laterally in, left and right. And so particularly when we're going down the fence, that poses a problem in that they kind of hang on it and do that. So therefore I go from the softer hackamores to then I graduate as I get them coming left and right laterally better to you have more, I'm going to call it bite to it with the stiffer hackamores, but you can also have more resistance.
Sure. Todd?
Yeah.
Comment a little bit about breaking it the pole versus breaking it the withers, what you mean by that.
Okay, so I would simply say that you see some of those pictures of bridle horses, like horses in the bridle, and they are vertical in their head position, okay? And breaking one at the withers, like again in a snaffle bit, which we spend a lot of time as a 2- and 3-year-old, 4-year-old, again is broke more to withers where that neck goes down, okay? But sometimes when the neck goes down too far, the back end comes up.
So they're pivoting if they're withering at the base of the neck versus front of it. When you break the pole, they're pivoting front of the neck by the head.
When you
Break at the withers, they're pivoting the pole.
Yes, and not this, I mean, obviously you have to have them broke in both places, but if you get, if you go over the line too far, then all of a sudden your balance is off, and again, you're not stopping, you're falling on your head. That's not good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, a question just back to the beginning. Would you just amplify a little bit on you start with the bigger and go to the smaller hackamore? Would you just describe a little bit some of the thinking that you use when you do that?
Well, again, let's say going back to a snaffle, like I didn't bring one, but I have some snaffles that I have coated in latex, that are big. I mean, like probably that big in diameter that I put on them to start, and we may ride them in a hackamore for a little bit, or halter or whatever, but we let them pack that snaffle because, again, in our event, it's very important to have a good mouth on a horse. So we want to teach that horse to carry that snaffle, okay? And we want a horse to get a hold of it. So it's important that we start big, and then as you get them broker, like a lot of times I won't even let them ride them in a snaffle till they can carry that snaffle, or I won't put bridle reins on. So and then again, from the bigger hackamore to the smaller one, a hackamore is a difficult piece of equipment to ride in because you can't out pull them. All right, if in a snaffle you can pull their head around to some extent, but a hackamore is they can certainly take advantage of you quickly if your hands aren't good. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Crawford, Pablo is a rawhide breeder from Argentina, and he has a question as far as the size of the hackamore. How slick you want it? How smooth you want the side on that hackamore?
Well, I think I have a wide variety of them that are, from a coarser one to smoother ones. And so I can't really say what I want, because I'll get a different one. We have to be careful that you can sure skin one up, and I said, when I was younger, for whatever reason, and maybe it was because I was using those stiffer hackamores to start them with, I had trouble skinning them up. And when they get sore there, then you create more resistance. So, and for whatever reason, and this bigger hackamore is probably the coarsest hackamore that I have, but I don't skin one near as much as what I used to. And I think when I do skin them a little bit, I get out of them and I go back to a snaffle for 3 or 4 or 5 days or whatever, and get it healed up and then come back.
What are you looking for when you transition from the bigger one down to the smaller one? What are you looking for to tell you, okay, it's time?
What am I looking for? Well, I wished he would just do what I wanted and go work the cow. Feel that, all this stuff is just feel, and like I change hackamores. Like I might stay in that a month or two, and then move to this here, and I believe this is a kangaroo, whatever. This is kind of my second hackamore that I go to that, again, is soft, but it's smaller. And I'm just looking for softness. I'm looking for softness to where I can go through, whether I'm stopping, turning, pulling left, pulling right, whatever I'm doing, and they're responding. So that's the feel that I'm talking about. And again, this is generally my second hackamore, and then, and a lot of times I'll stay in these hackamores, and then as I get closer to going to the show, then I might try, okay, let's see if I can get along with a little stiffer, smaller hackamore.
So, like with your size, what keeps coming to my mind? You start off with the larger diameter hackamore, and you were talking about the great big snaffle, which increases the surface contact, right? It's the smaller, the more acute the pressure will be in one particular spot. So when you have a young horse and you have a bigger diameters, it's a softer, more subtle signal being given to them that they can handle. And as the horse educates himself and moves through the education process, he understands what that signal means better, quicker. So as he gets better knowing it, you can decrease the diameter of it to
getting better yet.
Exactly, to increase the signal, the pressure just a little bit. So like one of the things in bridle bits that we talk about a lot is a spade. People, it's so big and bad. Well, would you rather somebody push you with their hand or with an ice pick, right? So the more surface contact you have, the softer, more subtle it is. So they can run off with a spade quickly, right? I mean, maybe.
I hope not.
I hope not. I shouldn't say that. But what I'm saying is surface. The greater the surface contact that you have with this, the more the signal is dispersed over the.
Yeah, like I feel like this big spade here, is actually, in my opinion, a very mild bit.
Sure.
But I'm not jerking on it either.
No,
I'm holding it and driving it. So just like you say, that bigger surface area, I'm using that to drive them up into to soften them.
Sure.
To go.
I have a question about skinning up when you're using a hackamore. When you see that they're getting skinned up, do you consider that maybe you're expecting too much lateral movement off of the hackamore because it is a vertical, and that maybe we need to think about more leg and seat? Is that something that you're considering when you go back, that maybe that isn't there?
So the question again is, when I skin one up, maybe I should go someplace else?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, you might
What
be
I'm
right.
saying is, if the hackamore is a vertical...
I need you to come watch.
Yeah, I know. If the hackamore is a vertical and then we're getting skinned up on the sides, is that maybe because we're using it too much for the lateral and not our seat
Well,
and legs?
let me explain something to you in the way the hackamore works, and maybe this will help you understand that. Like when I'm let's say bending laterally, okay, I cannot, in this hackamore, I cannot give them a solid pull. So there's a lot of, wiggling. There's a lot of bumping. There's a lot of, left and right. So I say left and right, like if I wanted a horse to stop, I'm not just going to pull straight back. I'm going to bump this on their jaw. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? And so that's where I believe the skinning comes from. All right? Because again, if I give them the solid pull, then they will run off. Guaranteed. Can tell you that from experience.
All right, we better get off in the saddles. The saddle guys will be mistreated. We got Silver too. So,
We got the quirt. I saw the quirt
yeah.
question.
Yeah, get the quirt. Let everybody see it. Do you ever use a quirt as a training aid?
So Clint Haverty's a friend of mine. I said, Clint, I want you to braid me something because I want something that you've done. And so this is my version of a quirt. This is, for me, like the quirt, and I don't use it too hard. I don't use it most of the time. I don't even use it really very often, but I do use it to tap their head down sometimes if I need to do that. And I do use it to sometimes when I'm going down the fence, I'll use it as an aid to help my horse. I'll tap him on the neck and left or right. So anyways, Clint Haverty made this for me, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's pretty useful.
Another point of signal.
Yep.
All right, let's get into saddles. Preference on seat length. You have a preference?
Me, 16 and a half
16 and a half.
for me.
And we have two different saddles up here. Maybe we should start with that and just,
Yeah.
why two?
Well, this is one of the saddles that I use to compete in. It's made by Martin. Actually, these are both Martins. I must set them this way here. I think this rope saddle's a 16. I was telling them earlier that my wife went to get me a rope saddle for Christmas one time, and I got the box, and I was all excited, and I got it out. J.D. Yates told her what to get for me, and it was like a little 13.5-inch seat that sent me way up here, and I called him up. I'm like, what in the hell did you send me?
And JD's
He said,
about
"Oh,
this
no."
tall.
Yeah.
Your JD's about this tall.
He said, oh no, that's what the ropers use. I said, well, this I know I don't rope that well, but I cannot use that saddle. So, but that's more what they use because they want to get up out of their seat. They need to get forward and rope, where I need to stay backward in this saddle. So that's why it's got a little bigger seat, 16 and a half versus 13 and a half. And this is, for me, this is just a very comfortable saddle that I believe that the horn is kind of a medium height, where they used to be, a lot of them, great big tall. Obviously, going down the fence, you can impale yourself on even this one here, so you got to be a little careful about how tall they are. And you can see it's tipped forward, so that also helps. Whereas the rope saddle is, again, a bigger, I believe this is a 16-inch seat. It's got some ground seat padding in there, where, again, personally, I like just a flat seat there because I'm closer to the horse. Again, it sits down a little bit more. This sits you up just a tick more. And again, let you get forward to do the roping event versus these, and actually Martin was making, I had some customers that he made the stirrups where they couldn't go back as far, because a lot of my non-pros, when they go to stop, they fall forward and they let their feet go backward. It's hard for them to balance through that, and that seemed to help them keep their feet forward where they could put weight in their stirrups and help get them stopped.
Do you have a preference on the lowest part of the seat? Like, am I describing that right, Carrie?
The lowest part of the
explain that, Schwartzy, what you're talking.
We see a lot of saddles occasionally where the lowest part is right almost to the base of the cantle board, and that horse is designed to get you against the cantle, and maybe there's a little bit of brace going on between your stirrups and the cantle. And these saddles, both your lowest point appears to be further forward.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I had not thought about that, but I would feel like this area here would be the lowest point where I have room to go, to slide back and forth a little bit and balance myself as things go forward and backward.
Yeah, a guy your size
coming into my shop, 16 and a half would seem like an enormous saddle, but as you describe it, you want that ability to, that mobility
I want-
within the seat.
Yes, sir.
Length of.
Yeah, I don't want to be constricted too much. I mean, obviously, I could not be constricted enough too, but I don't want to be constricted too much to do what we're doing,
Like a 13 and a half.
like a 13 and a half.
Cantle height, do you have a preference in cantle height? Is it too high, too low? Those look similar.
Well, again, to your point, with the lowest part being back here, I can tell you I have rode some of those saddles and running and stopping where I want to be back. And again, maybe that's the reason for a little more room back here. I want to get back and I want to lean back and I want that horse to run up underneath me. And if that lowest part was back towards the cantle, boy, it just hurts your tailbone. And so, again, I don't know what the size of this cantle is. I couldn't tell you, but it don't hit me.
You like it.
I like it.
There you go. All right, what about pads and fit? Or do you, I guess that depends on horse, but do you use certain pads and fitting on the saddle? What's your thoughts on padding?
Saddle pad? Most of the time we use like I don't know what Classic makes, kind of a
Belt?
felt pad. Yeah, and I sure like those. They seem to breathe a little better and are easier. Also, again, for the number of horses that we ride, we got to be real careful. They don't get too dirty, because we sure got some scarred up around their withers a little bit from dirty pads.
Yes, ma'am.
What about stirrup shape, size, and weight? Do you have a preference?
My preference would actually be like, say, make some aluminum stirrups that have more weight to them. I don't like too wide. I'm going to say maybe these are 2 inches. And so that for me is a good, it's enough to get my foot in, to hold me, to help me balance. It's not too small, it's not too big. It's kind of in between what you see a lot of them. But I do like those aluminum stirrups that have more weight to them, that I can use to help me tap a horse left or right.
More questions? Saddle makers? Big John, you were asked about the pads. Is that clear? No. Cool. Perfect. Well, silver. No. So obviously silver's used a lot. It is a, you know, we talk horsemanship and all that, and silver comes into function with the buckles and all that. But I'm going to guess that if it's easy to buckle and unbuckle as you're riding different size head horses and things like that, it's a good. But the dang thing doesn't work, then we're out. But do you have any preference on like the length? Through your experience, the length of the hole here, something like that?
Personally, Wilson, no, I don't have any preference. Like you say, I want it to look good. It's a show, you know. I heard somebody say yesterday, you know, no ball caps. It's a show.
Right.
We're cowboys.
Sure.
Get your cowboy hat on, you know. And we want to be proud of our stuff. Although, you know, I apologize, mine's kind of dirty, but this is the practical part of it.
Yep.
But if I go to the horse show, we'll try and get it cleaned up a little more.
Well, and silver, you know, silver is what makes it nice. It is the fancy. So you don't have to have silver on that saddle, but if you're going to be showing, a little sparkle's good, right? And
Little sparkle
that's what
doesn't
silver
hurt.
is. It's the, yes.
Well, I would just. Along those lines of the ornamentation, I was wondering, throughout your career, if you've seen a trend where things have gone either more or less, you know, ornamentation in the gear.
In my discipline in particular, I have not seen, you know, like a lot of silver on the saddle, for instance, where in the reining horse industry, some trainers have more, some trainers don't. You know, it's not as big of a, it's more about the horse and the run than it is what it looks like, but every little bit counts, you know, where I think we see in the horse show industry the most would be like the pleasure horses and the trail horses and those kind of horses that those people are showing that, you know, it's very common to see lots and lots of silver and on those saddles and bridles and all that.
You don't have a bridle up here without ornamentation, you know, like we do have the Tej in here that's not silver, but it's all engraved, so decorations happen on every one of them, you know, and it is, that is the fancy, that is the nice, and obviously it can be used. Todd was worried about the slobber left on them. I thought, no, that's perfect. I think it's cool. And it does bring credibility to me as a maker to see slobber there. Like, you know what I mean? That's the first thing that we do is build something that will work. I tell people all the time, I build a Porsche, and it's made to drive real good and go real fast, but you might not go mudding in your Porsche. Todd obviously is doing a little mudding, and that's cool, right? I mean, but anyhow, more questions anywhere? Uh-oh.
So the way that I like to think about it, which is actually true, is silver is a representation of achievement. That's why he's got a nice buckle on. That's an achievement.
Sure.
It's done in a precious metal, and it's the same as how you doctor up your bits or spurs.
It was brought to our attention a number of weeks ago where it was said, don't you think enough of your horse to have something nice on him? Right? So, yes.
So that's enough silver talk, but thanks for
Back to bit function, like on your snaffles, is there a reason you would prefer a straight mouthpiece versus like something with a little mullen to it, or is that just personal preference, or do you notice a big difference?
Personal preference. I think for a while the style was to have that straight piece like that. Probably still certainly is. Although I got a fella give me one with a mullen mouthpiece this summer, and I've used it quite a bit, and I've been amazed at what it feels like, you know. So I don't think I'm going to change my show snaffle, but I sure use that a lot in training. And again, this goes back to feel and personal preference as to, you know, it feels pretty good. I was shocked at how good it felt to me.
Yes, sir.
To tie off on what Troy was just talking about there. I know there's rules and regulations on width and size for the show pen, but give me your thoughts on your training procedure as far as mouth widths on some of these snaffles. I know some of these guys like a wider one with a little more play before it engages. Kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you how wide this is. Maybe what, 5 1/4? Is that kind of a common? 5. So yeah, I don't mind a wider one. I don't mind hanging it down just a little bit to where they got to maybe try and pick it up without hanging it down too much where they're, but I want there to be, I would like for there to be just a little, as I said earlier, I would like for them to be able to get a hold of it and pick it up. And so again, the width, I don't know. Again, probably just feel.
Are you hanging these bridles in your horse's mouth the same way where they have to pick it up as opposed to like
I'll put those bridles in their mouth just a little snugger. Little snugger. Yeah, because obviously that snaffle, there's your pressure points, is the corners of that mouth. And if you have pressure in those corners all the time, then you lose some of your signals. So, you know, where the signals on these bridles come from different places, you know, so you're not just using the corners of their mouth to signal your horse.
Sure. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
In your discipline, have you seen, or question really is, this is a traditional training method using the hackamore. Have you seen an increase in your discipline of folks using hackamores, or not so much?
No, I think we have, and I'm very proud of the Rain Cow Horse Association for keeping that tradition, you know, because that's the only place that I know that I mean, that's the progression of it. And again, having been able to go through that progression, I've seen the benefits every once in a while, you know, about once every 5 years of, hey, man, this worked really good. All that goddamn time I've spent trying to develop that. And so going back to that, like in our association, the bridle bit rules are you have to have a leather curb strap, you have to have shank hobbles, you have to have a roller, and you cannot have a broken mouthpiece. So they've done all that to, again, promote being as kind as you can to a horse's face, trying to do the job that we have to do. And again, through that process, in other words, like if I had I do have a smaller curb here, you know, but if I put all that on a young horse and go to try to work a cow like we do, you know, I'm going to crush the bars. I'm going to mess that horse's mouth up forever, you know. So again, I appreciate the time-honored tradition that they have helped me learn. Because when I grew up, I from Pennsylvania, and you know, the only tradition they had was they started them in a tom thumb snaffle and went on, you know. So again, learning all this, it's been pretty cool to see the process. It just takes forever. But that's what they say. What is it? They say mañana.
Mañana.
Yeah, mañana.
Just means not today.
Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe the next day.
How we doing on time, Gretchen?
We got a few minutes.
What about tongue relief with the bridle bits? We discussed it a while ago, kind of just amongst us, but is that something so there's 4 pressure points on a bridle bit. Tongue pressure is one of them. Are you for it, against it? Do you see create problems, not problems? I mean, what's your idea on tongue pressure?
I think you've got to experiment enough with all of them to find what your horse likes. And then a lot of times I'll still keep changing. I mean, I may take a bridle up to the back gate with me just in case the one I'm riding in don't feel good, you know.
So you don't have a menu in the barn. It's just, well, it's Thursday and this horse is this color, and so I get this.
No, I really truly do change up, you know, more so on the younger horses than the older. But again, you know, there's some horses that can't take that tongue pressure, you know, and in an attempt to try and make them, you mess them up, you know. So that's where you gotta find. That's why we buy bits.
So we like
Wilson.
that too.
That's why we buy bits, is so that we can have whatever we need for whatever situation, you know.
Perfect. We got about 5 more minutes. Yes, sir.
On your bridle bits, could you speak to the shapes of the shanks and the different uses for that?
Well, obviously the length of the shank plays a part in how much leverage you have, and you know, maybe he should speak to that.
I was thinking, I'm glad Todd asked to answer that. Well, there's, you know, I mean, yes, with shank length, and you have ratios.
Yeah, he knows about that stuff more than I do.
So, you know, it's the mouthpiece is the fulcrum point, and so then this part here is the purchase. This is the leverage. You move it back here. So it's just like the stick and the rock, and where you put the rock to when you're going to use it as a pry bar. So that's the fulcrum point. So absolutely all that matters a lot. And the signal that's created by where this mouthpiece is in relation to the top ring and the bottom, that all is big. And what makes this work, regardless of what it looks like, are those two hands that he's packing, right? That's what makes the bridle bit work, I promise. And a curb strap, yeah. So for the 4 pressure points of a bridle bit, tongue pressure, bar pressure, curb strap pressure, tongue, bars, pallet, that other little thing up there, yeah. So, and that's, you know, and so all those are, it's crazy how similar horses' mouths are. I mean, teeth and things vary, but that's the 4 pressure points.
Tell them about this one here and chewing on that.
Yeah, so
I thought that was interesting.
it's very interesting in that when you look at this, the width of these braces is a little wider than some of those over there, but man, they have been chewed on a bunch. Like the wire's smooth, and Todd was telling me that it actually had copper beads on it first, and they all got chewed off and replaced, and now these are on the verge of it too. And I was like, it kind of baffles me. I'm looking at these other spades, the braces aren't that much wider, and they're not chewed on at all. And that's something that, like, Ernie's great to talk to about all this stuff, but me and Ernie were discussing, like, you know, it's not that wide. And I wonder if the case isn't because this spoon at the top is so narrow, then it allows the bit to maybe move around a little easier. And that, I asked Todd, do you like that? He's like, well, no, that's not exactly what we're looking for. I'm chewing on the braces. You know, I want it to be a comfortable thing in the horse's mouth. And he obviously uses it, but you would prefer that didn't happen, right?
Yeah, and I would have to agree that bit, I do see horses, it does kind of wiggle
And
more than others.
I mean, that was very curious for me to see. I had never seen that. And that's a narrow spoon. Most of them are a little wider. And you look at some of these over here, and they're...
And the reason that they made this was so that it would fit up in that pallet better than those wider ones. And I do believe it's more severe than...
Yeah, back to surface area.
Yeah.
Right? It's the pressure is more acute on that smaller, so that's pretty wide. And I look at that, and there was one over here, one of these, maybe this one I was holding up. Like, that's really wide. I wouldn't, you, Ernie, what do you, that's pretty dang wide, right?
You could use a little trimming.
Yeah.
It might click it too, or something.
So it's got to fit in between those molars and the top as it goes up, and that can vary from horses, but it's fairly similar. What, inch and a half, maybe somewhere in there.
Yeah, it just depends. It also depends on whether it's
Spooned, yeah. Flat, sure. Did we burn up our 5 minutes? All right.
Got one back there in the back.
Oh, got one? Yes, sir.
Would you both speak to, as builder and artist,
Of bits and also user of bits about the ancestor to much of this, and that's the Spanish ring bit?
You go first. I didn't hear what you said.
I didn't hear you.
Talk about the Spanish ring bit.
Oh, Spanish ring bit.
I've maybe rode in a couple. I was never comfortable in that, and the curb, the way the curb went, and I didn't never feel like it, you know, was any different. You know, I had visions of it, you know, like boom, I put it on there, and you know, I got them, and they're not going to move, and I didn't feel that. And so I haven't really explored much into that, so I probably can't help you.
I defer my question to Mr. Dahl.
I'm very opinionated about ring bits. I think that if it's made with the proper dimensions, it's probably one of the best using bits there is. The problem with ring bits is in the late 50s and 60s, folks started putting rings on a California-style cheek piece, which gave it way too much leverage. and they got such a bad reputation from that. But if the leverage is equal or a little less going to the reins, it makes a world of difference. And I start horses in a ring bit because that port and ring just really keeps everything stable in their mouth. But I use it as a snaffle bit, a direct pull. And I drive horses in a ring bit the same way with a direct pull. But then as a horse gets more accomplished, I drop the reins down so it's about equal leverage. And that's what makes a ring bit work, is the leverage.
So you should come up here and point out, but when you say, the
distance from where the headstall hooks on,
yeah, which
the
tier?
bar, and the distance from the bar to where the reins hook on is the same.
Yeah, 1 to 1.
1 to 1.
1 to 1. So this being more 2 to 1. He's talking about 1 to 1.
More than 2.
Yeah, or more than 2.
You get a grazing bit with 6
Lot-
inches hanging down below the bar, you've got tremendous leverage.
Lots of leverage. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Well, thank y'all so much. This has been great. It's been fun. Thank you, Todd, for bringing credibility to our world and to us. I appreciate that.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you guys for